Thank you everyone for joining us today to the workshop on healthy relationships, healthy LGBTQ relationships. My name is Morelia. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'll be co-facilitating today's presentation with Andrea. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, again, thank you for joining us. My name is Andrea Espino. We're from WTLC and I'm the Human Trafficking Specialist with WTLC. And Morelia?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and share the presentation here. So again, my name is Morelia. I'm a community advocate at WTLC. So if anyone needs to take a step away at any point during this presentation, please do so. We do have a counselor available today. So this topic can be a little bit difficult to process if you've been through some experiences related to intimate partner violence. So please take the time to take care of yourselves, all right? So we're just gonna go ahead and get started.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about WTLC. We were formerly, or we're still Women's Transitional Living Center, although we don't use that complete name anymore. We stick more to WTLC. We no longer just serve women and we're no longer just transitional. So we accept all genders, all orientations, and we are emergency shelter, transitional shelter. We have mental health services, as well as legal advocacy services and prevention and education. Morelia and I are from the Prevention Education Department, and we are here to talk about healthy relationships within the LGBT community. At any point, like Morelia said, if you feel that this is a little bit too much, please go ahead and reach out to Kieran or take care of yourself and then come back to us. The room is not locked, so you'll be able to do that. One more, Morelia, please. So as we're going to talk about relationships, we do want to talk a little bit more about what is a relationship and the types of relationships. So you do have your chat box option. So if you can just let me know, what do you feel a relationship is before I tell you what I think it is. So using your chat, type in, what is a relationship to you? As well as what are some types of relationships? I'm going to give you a couple moments. I see any connection between two or more people, professional, romantic, or platonic, a bond between people. Yeah, those two are very close to what I have. So relationship is a connection between two or more people. And I like that, Kai, you put two or more, because a relationship can be between two people or between more than that. It can also be a supportive partner, as the chat's coming in. And yeah, there are a lot of types of relationships, as well as different dynamics to that relationship. So different levels of relationships. For example, if you do have romantic partners, if you have more than one romantic partner, there might be different levels to that relationship. Or with your siblings, you may have multiple siblings. That is a relationship with them, but you may not have the same type of relationship with each sibling. So not all relationships are the same. There are different dynamics between that relationship. And you can have a relationship with your coworkers, with your supervisors. There's many different types of relationships. This presentation that we're doing, all the information given can extend to all of those relationships. Although we're going to focus a little bit more on romantic relationships and dating relationships, especially among young adults, all of the information can be extended to your supervisor, to your coworkers, to your parents, to any other form of relationship and or dynamic that you have. We're going to also focus more on toxic or unhealthy versus abusive, and then healthy as well. We do want to clarify a little bit what a toxic relationship is as opposed to an abusive relationship. So when we're talking about a toxic relationship, it's not always abusive. We're going to go over what abuse means in a couple of slides, but for right now, we're going to focus on what is toxic and what is abusive. So as you can see here, a toxic relationship is disproportionate actions and reactions. So this can also be between two or more people, and the disproportionate action can be one partner, both partners, all of the partners, or it can be one partner in a relationship, mutual, toxic, or hostile environment in that relationship as well. Most of the time, these damaging behaviors are more of they're just like that. My partner's just like that. That's the way that they are with everyone. But it's still a toxic relationship. It's still a toxic reaction or response to conflict or to something that that partner may not want. And that becomes toxic when a person is not reacting or responding in a healthy way, as opposed to an abusive relationship where there is an imbalance of power and control. We're going to talk a lot about domestic violence, and domestic violence or any type of abuse is about power and control. It is also a conscious choice that one partner makes towards the other partner. So they are consciously behaving in a way that is going to damage or it's going to cause some sort of harm or hurt to the other partner. Go ahead, Marlene. You can see here a little bit of those differences between an unhealthy and an abusive relationship when it comes to your communication, respect, trust. Somebody in the chat said that in a relationship there has to be trust. So this is where we see that. Not an unhealthy or a toxic relationship, there's going to be disrespect from one or both partners toward the other. And that respect is going to mean different things for different people. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later, but when you do start a relationship, you do need to kind of talk about all of these things and what that means to each other. What does communication look like? What does respect look like? What does anything else look like when it comes to both parties or more, if there is more of a multi or polyamorous relationship? Everybody has to be on the same page on what these things mean to each other. Going from a healthy to an abusive can be a spectrum. Like it can vary and it can change within time of that relationship. We're looking at here to some statistics. These statistics do come from a research done a couple of years ago, the differences or comparing LGBT youth to heterosexual youth and their relationships. So we do see here that LGBT youth do go through more abuse than heterosexual youth. These numbers are also a little bit skewed or low. There are a lot of different reasons why LGBT youth or LGBT people in general don't report abuse or don't report when they are in an unhealthy relationship. There's different barriers. There's the embarrassment, or they don't want to call the police, or nobody's going to believe me, or I don't know where to get resources, so I'm going to stay here. So these numbers or any statistics that we talk about, keep that in mind, that a lot of the times it is underreported or miscategorized as well. Sometimes they don't, person that is taking that report, whether it's a police officer or a direct service provider, may not see that it is abuse between two partners and miscategorize as assault and battery, or just an unhealthy relationship between friends or something similar. We're going to go over a little bit of the types of abuse. These are some of the main categories that we use at WTLC, and most other domestic violence agencies use this as well. When it comes to physical abuse, these are not all examples. These are just some examples of what that may look like. So any unwanted contact with a person's body is going to be considered physical abuse, regardless if there is actual hurt or if it's biting, hitting, slapping, things like that are physical abuse, but also things like property damage, reckless driving, especially if done intentionally to either scare or harm that person, blocking exits, throwing things can be physical abuse. When it comes to sexual and reproductive abuse, things like demanding or forcing sexual contact or unwanted sexual contact, unwanted or non-consensual exposure to pornographic material, Denying safe sex, withholding safe sex is also a big one that we see within our community, withholding sex and affection when it comes to that power and control or that imbalance. Financial and economic, any control over money. So that can mean refusing to work or not letting one partner control finances or know about finances. This also comes to when the contract on the phone is under just one person, or the rent contract from the apartment is under one person, and the other partner has no idea what's going on. That is also considered financial or economic abuse. Spiritual abuse is one that a lot of us don't think about very often, but it is something that we see a lot with our population. There's things like ridiculing the religion or spirituality. So we do have to keep in mind that spirituality and religion are not the same thing, but they can be, or they are related to each other. There's a correlation. And a lot of the times, if one partner doesn't believe in the same religion or spiritual beliefs, there's a lot of the ridiculing or destroying of items, icons, or using their religion or spirituality to control the other partner's behavior. Technology is or digital abuse is also one that is increasing right now, since we're all doing all sorts of things like conferences, like work, like education through online. We're online a little bit more, and we're using our phones, and we're using texting and messaging and apps to communicate with others. So it's going to look a little bit different right now, but for the most part, it's using any sort of technology or your phone to control the other person. That can mean things like tell me where you are at all times, or tracking the person's phone, or recording any sort of conversation without the other person's consent. It doesn't just have to be any sexual activity. It can be any sort of recording of conversations. And when it comes to legal, this is a little bit more ambiguous, but things like withholding identification documents, when it comes to immigration, not filing that person's legal status when you promised, not allowing that person to change name, gender, pronouns on documents. And that is something that we're also seeing an increase with. Most of these types of abuse do cause some sort of emotional and psychological instability, but things like attacking the person's orientation, their expression, outing threats, threats of breaking up, threats of you don't love me anymore, manipulating, all of those things can cause more of an emotional and psychological abuse. So we don't always see these as easy as some of the other types of abuse. We have to be a little bit more vigilant on when these are happening. Things like lying, manipulating, gaslighting, self-blame on the other person, regardless of, well, I did this because you did this. I yell at you because you XYZ, when there's always an excuse to why the abuse is happening. That can also be very detrimental to somebody's mental and emotional well-being. So that would be considered emotional and psychological abuse. Morelia, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, so I included this power and control, sorry, give me one moment. I included this power and control wheel that's more specific to the LGBTQ community. So here you see more specific tactics of abuse against LGBTQ individuals. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is just for your reference if you want to learn more specifically what tactics are used. A lot of it harbors on using homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia to kind of like put down the other person and use tactics like, withholding like trans or non-binary specific items like hormones, clothing, wigs, things like that, using children, right? So a lot of the times, if they are an LGBTQ couple, in some states, there are issues with custody, right? So maybe one parent has custody and the other doesn't. So that is one way that they could use children. There's also HIV-related abuse, which Andrea will talk about a little bit more later. But yeah, so this is just for folks to look at another time if they want to read this in more detail.
A little bit more statistics when it comes to the types of domestic violence within the LGBTQ community. So you can see here 20% of victims have experienced some sort of physical violence. 16% have been victims of threats or intimidation. 4% of survivors have experienced sexual assault. These are also underreported. So these are very low numbers compared to what we're actually seeing with the people that we actually help here at any other agency. When it comes to a partner being transgender or gender nonconforming, we also have a couple of other types of abuse. So using offensive pronouns when it comes to identifying the other partner, or ridiculing or criticizing the gender nonconforming partner, misidentifying, and this is going to be purposefully misidentifying. There are times where as a community or anybody can misidentify, but once corrected, we try and correct our language and our behavior towards that. But if we're purposely using something that our partner, a word that our partner doesn't want us to use to hurt them, then this is when it becomes very abusive. So not only using the terms that they identify with, but their body parts. You see the examples there of using breasts instead of chest. For a transgender man. And what I mentioned earlier, withholding of hormones or medical services, this does happen a lot. And this is very abusive, not only physically towards a partner, but their mental health as well.
Yeah, and I also want to add to that too. It's also putting them in danger, right? If they go outside and they're not, quote unquote passing, that can also put them at risk for a hate crime if there's someone out there that is, transphobic or homophobic and uses that to commit a hate crime against that person.
And when it comes to HIV and AIDS-related abuse, the threat of outing. So not everybody might be out to family, friends, work, or anyone else. So using those types of threats that I'm going to tell, or I'm going to post it, or things like that. The HIV positive person may also suggest, if you leave me, I'm going to get sick. If you leave me, I'm going to stop taking my medications. So using that positive diagnosis as a form of manipulating that other partner to stay in the relationship. So preventing the HIV partner from receiving medication, very similar to the transgender one, as well as taking advantage of that HIV positive partner's poor health, or taking advantage of their economic situation. So things like, you're too sick to handle the finances, so give me control of all of your money, or your maybe Social Security benefits if there's some of that. Or you can't handle any of the legal things, or you can handle anything because you are too sick. And they're using that as a form of power and control. It might sound like, well, they're just being supportive. Yes, at times that is the case. The partner is being supportive over the HIV partner's mental health, but at times it does cross over to, I'm going to take control of all of your finances or all of your legal things because I want to take control over you as well. And the last one being the HIV positive person that is being abusive threatens to infect others or infect the partner by not practicing safe sex or by any other means. This is the cycle of violence. It starts with the calm on the left-hand side. This is where everything is fine. So usually at the beginning of a relationship, there is no abuse. Everything is fine. There's communication, and there's healthy trust. There isn't abuse at this time, or things aren't hostile or toxic. And as time progresses, then little things start happening, little things start changing, that tension building, communication breaks down, where one partner is walking on eggshells because the other one is going to get mad, or there's more of a control when it comes to, for example, now texting, or who are you going to go out with when we are able to be out in the world. So this happens little by little. And at one point, there's some sort of explosion, or this is where the abuse happens. So tension reaches a boiling point or a breaking point, and then there's some sort of physical abuse or verbal abuse. A lot of the times it does start with emotional and psychological abuse and move on to verbal, and then to some other types. Immediately after, there's a reconciliation period, or what as a lot of the times we hear as the honeymoon phase. This is where the partner that's being abusive apologizes for their abuse, promises it won't happen again. There's some sort of communication and agreement. Well, we're going to work on this, or we're going to try and communicate better, or there's some sort of negotiation involved here. And the partner that's being abusive, for the most part, is fulfilling the promises that are made. We go back up to a little bit of a calm period, but then again, the calm period won't last very long. Immediately after, the partner that's being victimized by the abuse is going to start walking on eggshells again, trying to not rock the boat or do everything in their power to make sure that the abusive partner isn't going to get mad again and explode. There isn't any time period of how long the calm period lasts or the tension building period lasts. It can happen in a couple of days. It can happen in a couple of hours. It can take years for the first cycle of abuse or explosion to happen. I like to think of this a little bit more as a spiral, because what we see with our population is that the first time between the calm and the tension building, or the tension building and the abuse occurs, again, it can take years or it can take months. But then when the cycle keeps going, the time period just decreases. It happens more often. And if we let it go on and we don't get the support or help that we need, at times it can become a daily thing where it's on a daily basis. There's some sort of verbal or psychological or emotional hurt from one partner to the other. These are some tips. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, you can always create a safety plan. The most dangerous time for a person that is being victimized is when they want to leave. When they want to leave that abusive situation, because that power and control and abusive behavior is going to increase from the partner, from the abusive partner. So it is always a good idea to create a safety plan. So for example, if your friend does want to leave that situation, it might not be the best thing to just say, leave that person, I'm gonna go get you. That might put them more at risk. And Morela's gonna talk about that a little bit more later. But it's always a good idea to tell some sort of family or friends if you're not safe with family, or tell someone that the abuse is happening so they can help you keep safe when you really need to. Always take threats seriously. And if somebody is in immediate danger, do call 911. Now, this comes a little bit with a caveat, because we sometimes don't want to call the police for different reasons, especially as LGBT community. They may not want to call the police because of other barriers, a fear that whoever comes to the house isn't trained with cultural sensitivity, or they're going to get miscategorized that it is domestic violence. So a lot of the times, calling the police may not be the best. Always assess the situation, or you can always call WTLC or other domestic violence hotlines to ask if it's an appropriate situation. But if you do feel that somebody is in immediate danger where their physical self is in danger, 911 is always recommended.
All right, so I just want to take this moment before we move on. Does anyone have any questions on what we just talked about, or need any clarification? We'll have some time at the end to answer some questions, but right now I know some might have questions that came up. So I'll just take this time to address those. I'll give you all a moment. All right, so how do you help a friend out of a DV situation if they go back to the relationship constantly? So I'm actually going to address that later on when I do talk about providing support to someone that you suspect is in an abusive relationship or someone that discloses to you. But that is a good question, and that's actually a question that we do get a lot as DV advocates. So thank you for that question. I'll definitely address that at the end. Anything else? All right, so it doesn't seem like anyone else has any questions, but feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll try to either answer as we go along or at the end. All right, so now we're just going to move on to talking about healthy relationships. So I just want to throw this question out there to everyone. In the chat, feel free to respond. What is a healthy relationship, and how do you know that you are in a healthy relationship? All right, so someone said where you feel comfortable and confident in communicating with your partners or loved ones. Yes, relationships consist of trust, communication, and respect. Yeah, those are very good answers. You know you're in a healthy relationship when there is consent. Yeah. Consenting on the same page, when you feel respected. Yeah, these are all really great responses, and a lot of this covers what I have here. So all healthy relationships look different, but what they have in common are qualities that define healthy relationships, like respect, equality, consent, healthy communication, trust, and emotional and physical safety. So again, all relationships look different, but these are all qualities that a healthy relationship has, right? So respect, that can be respecting each other's choices, beliefs, your values, your items, your things that you have, and your body as well, right? So it doesn't just go to beliefs, but also like physical things, right? So when we're talking about equality, most people think of equality as being a 50-50 split or just everything being exactly the same for everyone. And equality can be defined like this, but in a relationship, it's often a little more complicated. Relationships change, right? They ebb and flow as people's needs and interests and desires change over time, or sometimes even daily. So equality can mean different things to different partners. And what matters is how you and your partner define it for your relationship. It's important to communicate regularly about the balance in your relationship, especially if one of you is unhappy or uncomfortable. Right. So what I mean by this, let's say you're having a really rough week and your partner notices this, right? So they might pick up some slack a little bit, right? Maybe they might check in with you more. Maybe they, make breakfast for you, or they buy you breakfast. And they're just helping you out a little bit more, offering more support than they normally would. And that's because they know that you're going through it, right? Now, let's say that you kind of overlook this a little bit. After a week goes by, a couple of weeks, you kind of get used to it and you're not supporting your partner as much, right? And so the other person will speak up about that and say, hey, like I enjoy supporting you, but I also need this in return, right? So again, you do need to communicate regularly and check in to make sure that there is that balance. Now, when it comes to consent, right? So that just means practicing consent consistently and making sure that everyone feels comfortable, right? It doesn't just have to be in the bedroom, but also with social media, texting. Consent applies to many areas and facets of life. And then when it comes to healthy communication, a lot of people think that, when you have a healthy relationship, that means that you don't argue. And that's not true, right? You can still argue and have disagreements, but both partners approach it in a healthy and productive manner, right? So partners can communicate in a calm voice, there's appropriate accountability, and conflicts are resolved through compromise, agreements, or simply just talking it out, because they can clarify what the needs and expectations are that came up out of a certain conflict. And then with trust, basically there's just mutual trust, right? Both partners know that they can count on the other to be honest and reliable. They trust each other and encourage each other to spend time with people that they care about and do things that they enjoy, right? And they can also trust their partner to be there for them, to communicate with them if they've ever had a change of heart, right? If let's say they're in the relationship, but they're not feeling it so much. So just communicating that change of heart. And then when it comes to emotional and physical safety, no one, especially those that you care about, should intentionally harm you physically or emotionally, right? Safety is evident when you don't fear being vulnerable around them and They don't humiliate you. They never physically harm or threaten you. And during any argument, you still feel safe with them, right? And you know that if your partner is upset or angry, you still feel safe, right? Because they're managing that anger in a healthy manner, right? So again, you know, all healthy relationships look different, right? So they're different because of how they're structured or who is in them, right? So when we're talking about healthy LGBTQ relationships, we characterize them with creativity and resiliency. And this is because a lot of LGBTQ individuals face different oppression like homophobia, transphobia, or biphobia from mainstream society. So we have to create safe and affirming spaces within our relationships. So, you know, this can look like, you know, partners respecting each other's gender, pronouns, their name, sexuality, and expression. And this can require a lot of flexibility because, you know, folks take time to process how they feel about their gender or their sexuality. And again, that also reflects in taking time with how they're expressing it, right? So this goes hand in hand with having patience and dedication, right? Patience in and dedication to understanding that both people don't know everything and that it takes time in learning one's new name or a change in pronouns, right? So both people dedicating to learning about each other to establish that respect and safety. And then when we're talking about respecting each other's coming out process, you know, that's basically meaning that there's never any pressure or threats to out someone and reveal their sexual or gender identities. So basically just respecting each other's coming out process and even offer support by being there for them. And this is going to look different for every relationship based on, you know, whether one partner is out or not, or both partners are out. But just communicating with each other like, hey, is it okay if I use these pronouns in front of your family or in front of your work colleagues, right? And then we have affirming each other's multiple identities as an LGBTQ plus person. So just being mindful with the language you use when regarding each other or talking about each other, or just talking with each other in general, and validating any experiences of oppression related to their LGBTQ identity as well. So some more ways that we can see an LGBTQ relationship would be when both partners can provide a safe space of acceptance and positive regard. So this could look like having open conversations that allow both individuals to reflect on their identities and how they could feel more uplifted in their relationship and as LGBTQ plus individuals. And again, just going back to respecting each other's boundaries. Maybe one partner is transgender or non-binary and they're uncomfortable with having their chest touched because it triggers their gender dysphoria. So for those that don't know what gender dysphoria is, it's basically when a person experiences discomfort or distress because there's a mismatch between their sex assigned at birth and their gender identity. So, you know, going back to the example, in a healthy LGBTQ plus relationship, maybe one partner is uncomfortable with having their chest touched or having their chest referenced as breast or boobs. So the other partner would respect their boundaries by avoiding touching their partner's chest or avoiding using language that can trigger dysphoria. And this is going to be different for every relationship, right? Maybe some trans or non-binary individuals don't experience gender dysphoria when it comes to certain body parts, right? So again, there's just that heavy presence of healthy communication, right? To establish those boundaries and to resolve conflict and express what your needs, feelings, and expectations are in that relationship. All right, so now we're just gonna practice what everyone just learned with a game. So I'm gonna give a scenario, and for each scenario, specify in the poll whether you think it is a red light, so either an abusive or toxic situation, a yellow light, an unhealthy relationship, or green light, a healthy relationship. So there's gonna be a poll that pops up for each scenario, and just go ahead and answer there. There's also gonna be a fourth option that says unsure. So again, if you're just not sure about the situation or you haven't been in a relationship, so you haven't really encountered that situation, feel free to put that. But I would suggest to go with your gut instinct, right? Do you think it's abusive or toxic? Do you think it's unhealthy? Do you think it's healthy? Go with that gut instinct. And of course, we're going to talk about it. So, you know, everything is gonna be talked through and we can discuss it. All right, so the first scenario, your partner keeps pressuring you to come out of the closet because they think things will be better for your relationship with them. So is this a red light, yellow light, or green light? So go ahead and answer in the poll. And Andrea, would you mind sharing the results of the poll? I can't see it here on my screen.
Votes are coming in, and pretty much 50-50 at the moment. A couple more red lights.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close the poll now. All right, so what are the results saying, Andrea?
We have a 47% for red light, a 47% for yellow light, and a 6% for not sure.
All right, yeah. So the response that we have is yellow light unhealthy, right? So in situations like this, you know, or any situation regarding, you know, your personal life, you have a right to privacy, right? And if your partner is pressuring you to expose parts of you or your relationship, that is unhealthy, right? You're allowed to come out on your own terms, and your partner is not obligated to stay in a relationship with you if you're not ready to be out about your gender or your sexual identity. Let's say, you know, if you do choose to be in a relationship where one or more partners is not out, again, there needs to be clear boundaries set around pronouns used, right? Or information shared about your gender or sexuality around certain people or environments. And a lot of these scenarios are not going to be black and white, right? So let's go back to this. What if, you know, your partner is threatening you, right? So that's different from pressuring. If they are threatening you, that does border on abusiveness, right? Because a threat is shifting more towards trying to control what you're doing, right? So if they are threatening to out you or they do out you, that is abusive, right? And that can be very harmful for individuals that are not ready to come out. All right, so we're going to go to the next scenario. Your partner texts you when you want them to, and they get angry if you don't respond. So is this a red light, a yellow light, or green light? All right, Andrea, what are the results looking like?
Have a 44% on a red light, a 44% on yellow light, and a 11% on not sure.
Okay. All right, so that is a yellow light. We put yellow light. So again, like I said, these aren't black and white situations. So, you know, the answer could change but based on the context of that scenario, right? So everybody is entitled to space, even from their partner. And if you feel like you don't have enough space, that is a sign of an unhealthy relationship. And getting angry over something as small as not texting back is a warning sign that something is not right. It could be a warning sign for an unhealthy way of handling anger, or it could even be a warning sign for abuse, right? Depending on how angry they become. You know, let's say that they get angry because they needed to hear back from you right away, right? They had a very important question, and they got angry, but then they realized afterwards, like, hey, you know what? It's no big deal. They were probably busy. Maybe they weren't by their phone, right? So that would be fine, right? But let's say that the next time they see you, they start to interrogate you, right? They start asking you all these questions, like, what were you doing? Why weren't you texting back? Maybe they start throwing accusations out, like, oh, you were probably cheating on me. Let me see your phone, right? So again, that would harbor on abusive. Now, let's say that this is a pattern, right? And this is a regular occurrence. That definitely is abusive or toxic, right? So again, it depends on the situation, really. You can't really say whether it is specifically unhealthy, abusive, or toxic, because you have to look at what that relationship is looking like as a whole and whether this is a pattern or if this is just an isolated incident. All right, so this next one, your partner gives you gifts but demands something in return, like money or sexual acts. So is this red light, yellow light, or green light? All right, so what are the results showing, Andrea?
We have 87% for red light, 2% for yellow light.
All right, so yeah, you guys pretty much hit that. Red light, abusive, right? So again, gifts should not come with expectations or entitlement to another person's body or belongings. If someone is giving you a gift with the intention of getting something back, that's an issue, right? Demanding or expecting for repayment is abusive. And this scenario in particular also verges on exploitation. Andrea, did you want to talk more on this scenario, or should we just move on?
Yeah, we may not have enough time to go through all of other scenarios, but I did want to hit on this one because 40% of human trafficking or exploitation victims are LGBTQ. So if you feel that somebody is giving you a gift, money, benefits in exchange for not just sexual acts, but companionship or anything else of value to you, then we do have to see at the relationship to see if it's abusive and if it's an exploitation or if it's a human trafficking situation. So if you feel uneasy about something because they're promising you your own apartment, money, gifts, vacations in exchange for a service for you to provide, then we do have to look at that.
Thank you, Andrea. All right, so this scenario, you are feeling jealous and insecure about your partner constantly hanging out with their friend and being very flirtatious with them. You bring this up to your partner and they tell you that's stupid, you're just being ridiculous and paranoid, get over it. Right, is this red light, yellow light, or green light? So we're gonna cut down the polling options for a little bit just for the sake of time so we can get through this fast. All right, what are the results showing, Andrea?
We have a 29 red light and 67% yellow light and an 11% green light.
All right. All right, so do folks want to share in the chat box why they think it's a red light or why they think it's a yellow light, and then go ahead and talk about that. So we actually have that it's red light abusive, right? So this scenario is a little tricky, right? Jealousy and insecurity isn't a nice feeling, but this is something that's inevitable to feel these feelings. Everyone feels them at one point or another in their life, so it's normal, right? But let's say you bring this up, you bring this concern to your partner, they shouldn't put you down and they shouldn't make you feel like you overreacted, right? A healthy communicator would address your concerns, and in the relationship, you could discuss how to navigate those feelings and what you can both do, right? So if they put you down and gaslight you for even speaking up, that is abusive, right? So someone said gaslighting and demeaning language. Yeah, exactly, right? And if for those that don't know, gaslighting is basically when someone tries to, make your reality different than it actually is. So that could be someone hiding your keys and pretending like they don't know where they are, to even someone hitting you and saying, and if you ask them like, why would you hit me? Why would you do that? And they respond with, what are you talking about? I never hit you. Why would I do that? Right? So that would definitely make me question my own sense of reality, right? So that is gaslighting. And in this situation here, they're saying that's stupid, you're being ridiculous and paranoid, kind of making them feel like they have no reason for saying that. So that is red light. That is the red light right there. Do something upsetting. But in a healthy relationship, you should feel safe telling your partner when something upsets you, and they should take it seriously, right? And they should work with you to ensure your safety and happiness. If they're misgendering you quite often, that can harbor on unhealthy or toxic, right? Because why is it happening often? Is it because they don't view your gender, they don't respect it? And let's say that they're doing it quite frequently. That could be abusive. Are they doing it to hurt you? Are they doing it to put you down? So again, it just depends. But if they do stop, if they do address it, and they don't continue to do that, then that is healthy. Okay, I think this is the last one. Your partner says you don't really love them because you want to go to a movie with a friend instead of spending time alone with them. All right, so this is yellow light, unhealthy, right? So It's not okay if your partner makes you feel bad or guilty for wanting to hang out with a friend instead of them. In a healthy relationship, your partner should respect and trust you when you're out with your friends, and they shouldn't make you feel like you have to choose between your relationship and other friends or family. Right? If your partner feels like they want to spend more time with you, there's a much better way to express that and approach that rather than give ultimatums like choosing between a partner over friends and family. All right, so now we're getting back to how to help a friend or family member that you suspect is in an abusive relationship or has reached out to you and confided in you. So just some tips, be safe, available, and non-judgmental, right? So let the survivor know that you're there for them, whether they want to, whether they do or don't want to leave the relationship, or whether they're ready, right? So let them know that they can talk to you, they can call you, and if they need a break and you're able to, offer them your place to stay with you, right? Many teens fear that their parents or adults will overreact, they'll blame them or be disappointed or won't believe or understand them. So if you are a parent or adult and a teen opens up to you, let it be on their terms and meet them with understanding, not judgment. Keep it low key, try not to push for more information that they're willing to share. And while it can be difficult to only offer your support, doing so might mean everything to the survivor and may be the reason that they feel safe to come to you if they are ready to take the steps they need to leave, right? If you keep pushing them for more information, they might not feel like they're safe with you because you're pressuring them to open up or you're telling them what they should and shouldn't do. All right, so let them know you care and show concern. So abusive people maintain control over their partners by isolating them and convincing them that no one cares about them. And in LGBTQ specific situations, they might use homophobia, biphobia, or transphobia to say that no one will offer them support because they're LGBTQ+. And this fear and shame can prevent a survivor from asking for help or confiding in another person. So if you do suspect or someone, opens up to you, let them know that you're concerned for their safety, right? You can say things like, you don't deserve to be treated like this. You deserve to be in a relationship where you're treated with respect. And remind them that it's not their fault, right? Point out that what's happening to them isn't normal, right? Reinforce that dating should be a fun and healthy experience. And listen and meet the survivor where they are. So this means, try to refrain from telling them to leave, right? Hear where they're coming from and support them in the ways that they need. Listen to them and decide what to say next based on their reactions to what you have said. So if you are worried and the survivor gets defensive, then take a step back, right? You don't want to unintentionally push them away. This also goes into not assuming that you know what is best for them or their situation. Don't tell them what you think they need to do, only offer advice if they ask for advice, right? Respect the survivor's ability to read their abuser and figure out what they're capable of. A lot of the times we think, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to leave, you should do this, you should do that. But when we're telling them those things, we're kind of doing what their abuser is doing, right? We're trying to make them make choices for them. We're trying to control what they should do in that relationship. But ultimately, we should try to empower them to make those decisions themselves, right? So another thing is when we think of abuse, we might tell ourselves that we wouldn't let it happen to us, or we would simply walk away. But every person's situation is different, and everyone has different reasons for leaving or staying in an abusive relationship. So again, you can't say what you would do in that situation unless you have been in that situation. And even if you were in that situation and you did leave, again, everyone's situation is different. Other people have different reasons for leaving and staying. So you can't really say it's a black or white issue because it's not. Domestic violence and intimate partner violence is a very complicated issue. And then empower the survivor to take action, right? So leaving an unhealthy or abusive relationship is difficult and even dangerous, right? It takes on average 8 to 9 times for someone to leave a relationship for good, right? So, avoid blaming or belittling them. Abusive partners, put down their victims regularly. So their self-esteem is already really low. So when you're talking to the survivor about a plan of action, know that the decision has to come from them, right? So ask what next steps they would like to take. And this can range from creating a safety plan or planning when to leave the relationship and how, or simply offering them for support if they make that decision to leave. And if they're uncomfortable discussing this with you, help them find additional support, like reaching out to a local domestic violence nonprofit or talking to an advocate on a hotline, or trying to help them identify an adult in their circle that they can reach out to. Avoid ultimatums. So resist the urge to give an ultimatum. For example, let's say you're a friend, avoid telling them, unless you're leaving, I don't want to hang out with you. If you're a parent, avoid saying, if you don't break up with them right away, you're grounded or you won't be allowed to date anyone in the future. So you want to avoid this because you want your friend or family member to truly be ready to walk away from the relationship. And if you're forcing that decision, they might be tempted to return to their abusive partner because of unresolved feelings. Abusers often control their partners by isolating them from friends and family. And if you stop hanging out with your friend, then your friend becomes more isolated and has less support. And in this way, their abuser gains more power. So, friends and family who are experiencing abuse need support and love to help counteract the negative and abusive messages that they're getting from their partner. So again, let them know that you're there for them no matter what. And then lastly, talk about the behaviors, not the person. So when you're talking about the abuse, speak about the behaviors you don't like and not the person, right? So instead of saying she's controlling, you could say, I don't like that she texts you all the time to see where you are, right? So this is basically acknowledging that they might still have feelings for that person. They might still have love in that relationship. And, talking badly about their partner could discourage them from asking for your help in the future, right? It could actually, make them go back to their partner more and say, oh, no one understands, so I shouldn't talk about this with anyone. All right, so lastly, get support, right? So this applies to victims and survivors, but also those that are supporting survivors, right? Supporting a survivor is very difficult and it can be frustrating. So find yourself a support who isn't a survivor with whom you can vent, talk, or think about how you can best be helpful. So these are some resources here that offer support. And then these are some LGBTQ specific domestic violence services, right? So the one on the right here, the Network La Red, that one is actually based in Boston, Massachusetts, but I listed it on here because they do have a 24-hour LGBTQ plus domestic violence hotline. All right, so that's pretty much it. Just some final thoughts. Abusive behavior is learned behavior. Just the way that it is learned, it can be unlearned. It's never something you did or didn't do. So it's never the victim or survivor's responsibility of what their abuser did to them, right? And then again, no one deserves any type of abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, financial, spiritual, any kind of abuse is unacceptable. And then it's
Oh, I think she cut out for a moment.
about how they use their anger. All right. Andrea, did you want to add something?
No. If anybody feels that they need more information on this or you do require additional assistance, we can put out our information is right there. You can email us or you can call our 24/7 bilingual or multilingual hotline as well to get any help if somebody does need any sort of assistance, whether it's emergency shelter or mental health, as well as safety planning for you, or if you want to see how you can help a loved one or a friend create a safety plan for them to be able to leave their relationship safely.
Yeah.
If you have any additional questions, you can put them in the chat box, or like I mentioned, you can email us at the information on the screen.
Yeah, so I did go to get a question, the PowerPoint, would y'all be able to share this excellent PowerPoint with us through email? So this conference is actually going to be available on YouTube, so you can check it out there. But I'm also willing to share it with anyone, so you can just email me, Morelia Rodriguez, or Andrea, and we can share the PDF with you. All right, thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate your participation, your questions. Again, if you do have any questions and feel more comfortable asking us privately, please do so at our emails.
Don't forget to also fill out your evaluations. There was a link on the chat box. It's going to help out our hosts, our conference host for future events as well. So don't forget to do that.
Thank you, Andrea and Morelia. And yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.